Good afternoon, everybody. So, welcome to this afternoon session on an awareness session, rather, on sexual harassment of women in the workplace. And so, I'm representing the Internal Complaints Committee of ISER Kolkata. My name is Dr. Neelanjana Sengupta, and I happen to be the convener of this committee. So, on behalf of ICC, we are going to do, this workshop, this mini workshop today, which will kind of take you through through the rules of sexual harassment as it stands in India now, and how we intend to implement the rules. Okay. So it will not be a very long presentation, and we are recording this session, and it will be posted on the Institute YouTube channel at a later point. And if you have any questions at the end of the session, you may raise your hand and we can take a few questions. We will not take very detailed questions, but we will take a few questions at the end of the session. Okay. So let us begin. Let me share my screen. Okay. Is my screen visible? Just the way it is that I cannot see myself the way the setting is done, but I hope my screen is visible, right? Okay. So, welcome again to this afternoon session on sexual harassment in the workplace. Before we begin, we would like to take a minute and think about what is sexual harassment and, how it kind of affects the victim. So, sexual harassment, this phenomena results in violation of fundamental rights of a woman to equality. A woman is also a person, right? So, it violates her fundamental rights to equality, her right to life and to live with dignity, her right to carry on any profession, which includes a right to a safe environment free from any harm or any fears of harassment, right? So, that is the very broad definition of sexual harassment, and we will go through more examples of sexual harassment at a later time. But here in ICER, we have an internal complaints committee, which is ICC for short. Okay. And our mandate is to uphold the dignity of women within the ICER Kolkata community, because our institute, ICER Kolkata, is committed to providing a safe, secure, and a welcoming working environment free from any gender discrimination and sexual harassment. So, regardless of who you are, what your gender is, even what your gender orientation is, if you are in ICER Kolkata, you should be guaranteed that you have a safe, secure, and a welcoming working environment. Okay. So hence, here in ICER Kolkata, we have a zero tolerance policy towards sexual harassment. There's no ambiguity to that. Okay. So, before I move forward, I will introduce members. So, it happens to be a full working day today. There is teaching responsibilities. One of the departments has a PhD interview, but still, I'm glad that some members could make it. And I will request the members, if I call their name, if when I call their name, they may unmute themselves and just switch on their video cameras. So, this is Nilanjana Sengupta. I'm a member of the Department of Biological Sciences. I'm the convener, and my email at which you may reach me for complaints is given here. We have two external members as it stands. One is Miss Shweta Luthra, who is a consultant with SASHA, which is a non governmental organization. She is not here today, she's an external member. And for now, we also have another external member, Dr. Sneha Shikta Swarnakar, who is a scientist at the Indian Institute of Chemical Biology in Kolkata. These two members are not present. Then, as internal members, we have another faculty member from DES. I'm sorry, this is Department of Earth Sciences. There's a typo here, please pardon me. Dr. Swastika Chatterjee. Swastika, would you mind switching on your video and just saying
Yeah,
hello?
I'm on. I have switched on my video. So I'm
Okay.
Swastika.
Nilanjana, the mail addresses are also there is problem.
Oh, there's some issues with the mail addresses. I'm sorry. I will edit this. Okay, so we can do it right away. Swastika, your email is swastika at Iserpol, right?
Right.
It's
So,
DES.
so
It's DES.
Right. I'm
it's
extremely sorry for that typo and thank you for correcting that. Okay. So that is swastika
Radhika's one.
Chatterjee.
Radhika's one.
Radhika is DBS.
But the
female
Mela.
IT.
Okay. Radhika. Okay, I'll come to Radhika. Then Dr. Parna Gupta from the Department of Chemical Sciences. Parna, can you just say hello?
Yes. So
Okay.
I'm Parna from Department of Chemical Sciences.
Okay. Okay. I apologize for these typos. Then Dr. Radhika Venkateshan. She is in the Department of Biological Sciences. Radhika, are you there?
Yeah. Hi. It should be RV at Iserkul.
This is RV Act. Yeah, because we are a newly constituted committee, so I apologize for these typos. So there is Dr. Radhika Venkateshan. She is also a member of the ICC. Then we have Dr. Sumande Sarkar, who is in the chemistry department, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. They have an interview going on. Dr. Arnab Gupta, also an associate professor at DBS. I think Arnab is also not there. Then, okay, I'm again very sorry for the typos. Mr. Debajyoti Guha, research scholar who's a student member. Debajyoti, would you mind switching on your video and introducing yourself?
Yeah, hello, I'm Debuchy.
Okay, so there is Debajyoti, who is a research scholar. Then we have Miss Debshruti Biswas. She's a final year BSMS student. Debshruti,
Hello everyone. I'm Dikshit.
there's Debshruti. And finally, last but not the least, a very important component is Dr. Sureshri Datta. She's our member secretary. Sureshri, if you could say hello.
Namaste.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is the constitution of the ICC as of today. We have taken over less than a month back. And so we work as a team in order to ensure that, that adequate steps are taken against sexual harassment in ISA Kolkata. Okay, so our role is, coming to our role, we first have to start with the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act of 2013. Okay, and the University Grants Commission, Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal of Sexual Harassment of Women, Employees, and Students in Higher Educational Institutions Regulations 2015. As per the regulations provided by these two entities, the ICC, here I mean ICC of ISER Kolkata, the ICC addresses sexual harassment complaints. The ICC, please note, our job is to act as a fact-finding body. Okay, so our here, let me see. We are actually a fact-finding body. We are an investigating body. We cannot actually we can recommend actions. Okay, we cannot take actions, but we can do our best to do investigations. And based upon the results of our investigations, as a committee, we can recommend certain things. Okay, and we work on all acts of sexual harassment against any individual. Okay, so coming to what exactly is sexual harassment, because this is a little bit, there's not much clarity sometimes. We sometimes are confused whether a certain act was an actual sexual harassment or not. Okay, so again, we go back to the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Act of 2013. Sexual harassment includes one or more of the following unwelcome behaviors, okay, whether directly or by implication. Okay, it is either direct or by implication. Unwelcome, unwanted acts of behavior, okay. Physical contact or advances. If you did not really look forward to a physical contact with someone, but they kind of force that on you, that is a sexual harassment. Obviously, a demand or request for sexual favors, okay, unwanted, non-mutual, that's a harassment. Making sexually colored remarks or jokes or stories, stories, jokes where there's a sexual implication or a sexual innuendo, which you are not looking forward to, that is harassment. Display of pornography, okay, offensive, derogatory emails, pictures, cartoons, pamphlets. You're made to see these where, it's obviously pornography, or, pornographic statements somewhere. That is harassment. Any other uninvited. So please see this uninvited is highlighted here. Any other uninvited physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature. Okay. So if something was not, you did not ask for it and it came to you without you looking out for it, and it has a sexual component to it, then that's a sexual harassment. Also, offensive remarks, teasing related to a person's body or appearance. Okay, if somebody is talking about your body or your appearance or your sexual appearance in particular, those constitute sexual harassment. Gender-based insults, sexist remarks, clearly sexual harassment. Invasion of your personal space is if somebody is getting too close to you for no reason, brushing against you, or you feel kind of cornered where you have nowhere to go, your personal space is invaded. That is harassment, sexual harassment. Unwelcome social invitations with sexual overtones, which we, down in the ages, it has been commonly referred to as flirting. But you can figure that out. Sometimes there are sexual invitations there are social invitations with sexual overtones, which is sometimes confused with flirting, but it is likely to be sexual harassment. And if somebody is persistently asking you out despite your annoyance, despite you clearly saying no, okay, that also you can be taken as sexual harassment. So we have put forward some 10 examples here, but based on these, you can actually understand whether this particular act is a sexual harassment act or not. It has to be unwelcome and it has to be uninvited. All right. So, okay, we have some more examples. Stalking an individual. If somebody is consistently following you without you liking it, without your knowledge, or, in a surreptitious manner, that's harassment. Inappropriate questions, suggestions, or remarks about a person's private life. Okay. If you figure out that this person is not my friend, I do not discuss my private life with him, but still he is actually getting into my private sphere and asking me questions, that could be harassment. Intimidation, threats, blackmails around sexual favors, threats, intimidation, or retaliation against anyone who speaks up about unwelcome behavior with sexual overtones. Okay, so if somebody, if you are speaking out and if somebody is intimidating you with sexual overtones, okay, because you have spoken out, that is harassment. Very obviously, forcible physical touch, molestation, if somebody has forced themselves on you, okay, without your consent. Without your consent, if somebody has forced you, that is harassment. Falsely accusing and undermining a person behind closed doors for sexual favors, that is again harassment. Controlling a person's reputation by rumor mongering about her private life, that is sexual harassment. And voyeurism. Now, this word voyeurism, that is actually not a very familiar word with many of us, but voyeurism is kind of a distorted sense of seeking pleasure from sexual acts performed by others. Okay, so there are some strange people out there who enjoy seeing others in a forced or sexual position. So that is voyeurism. So if somebody is indulging in voyeurism also, that also constitutes sexual harassment. So there are these 18 or so points that we have listed out here, but there could be other situations as well. But at the end of the day, if it is unwelcome, if it is uninvited, and if it clearly has something to do with sexuality, uninvited, unwelcome, non-consensual, then it constitutes harassment. So, if you feel you have been subjected to sexual harassment, you have to, of course, consider the points. And if you really feel you have been subjected to harassment, what should you do? What you should not do is ignore it. Okay, if you have been the victim of sexual harassment And if you feel that it is okay to ignore it, and if I don't speak out, the harasser will simply at one point stop, it's too much of a trouble, that is a wrong strategy. Because if you keep ignoring it, the harasser may not go away. The harasser may actually misinterpret a lack of response as approval of the behavior. In other words, the harasser may feel more and more emboldened. Okay, so please do not ignore it. Do not feel any sense of shame. A victim should never feel ashamed. If you have done nothing wrong, there's no reason for you to feel any shame. Okay, go and tell your harasser emphatically that you do not feel good with his behavior. Okay, and ask him to stop it. Okay, you should be very clear about making a statement that you find the behavior offensive. Talk to someone you trust. Okay, this point is very important. If you have been harassed, okay, you might have a good friend here, you might have a relative, or you even might have an advisor. Go and talk to them. Okay, someone that you trust, go and tell them that this has happened to me, I feel extremely harassed, I feel extremely uncomfortable in this person's presence, this is not going away, so please, you know tell that person. And if you want to help us keep a record of all the incidents of sexual harassment, I know it is psychologically very difficult to keep a record, but if you do that, and when a complaint is lodged, it actually helps in the investigation. The record will be very helpful when you will lodge a complaint. So please remember, do not ignore, do not feel ashamed, talk to someone and keep a record as much as possible of all the incidents that have happened to you with regards to the harassment. Please do not delay. Please report to us as soon as you can. Okay? If you're completely sure that this is not an arbitrary incident, this was actually a case of harassment, please do not delay. Contact us. Come forward and complain. Now, what should an ICER Kolkata member do? Okay, so in other words, if you are associated with ICER Kolkata in any form, you could be a student, you could be an employee, you could even be a faculty member, you could be a temporary worker, okay, you could be a postdoc, okay, you could be somebody working, as a consultant, you're somehow related to ICER Kolkata. Write to us immediately at cash.convener@icercol.ac.in. You can also talk to us or email any one of the members. Okay, so we have the names of all the members in the ICER Kolkata ICC website. If you go to that, of course it's preferable to write to cash.convener, but feel free to write to any member. Okay, but please submit your complaint within a period of 3 months. Okay, and if there is a recurrence, if you're feeling harassed many times, then within 3 months of the last occurrence. It may be extended by another 3 months if the committee finds the circumstances as explained in the written complaint for the delay to be valid. In other words, if you're delayed, but if you can explain why you delayed beyond 3 months, then the committee might take a call and take up the case. But it is preferable to report the incidents of harassment within a period of 3 months from the last recurrence of the harassment. Now, when you actually file a complaint, the complaint should contain descriptions of as much as closely as possible. Sometimes it's a little difficult. Was it the 15th? Was it the 22nd? Was it a Monday or a Tuesday? Sometimes victims can get confused, but as closely as possible. Dates, times, places, the respondents' names, who are you making this allegation against, and as far as you can, the names of witnesses if possible. Okay, so this is the information we need. In addition to your description of incidents, this goes without saying, you are going to describe the incidents. We will need as closely as possible the dates, times, places, the harassers, the respondents' names, because the harassers, when we file a complaint, will become a respondent, names of witnesses as far as possible. We will help you. Okay, now sometimes it so happens that the victim is really so traumatized that she cannot make a complaint anymore. She is, or there's certain physical circumstances or certain circumstances owing to which the harassed person cannot make a complaint, on account of physical or mental incapacity. Okay, in those situations, so let's say you are completely confident that your close friend, co-worker, relative has been harassed, okay, who is associated with ISO Kolkata. Okay, so the complaint may be made by the victim's friend or co-worker or relative, by any person regardless of any gender. Any person having knowledge of the incidents, he or she can make a report. A report can also be made by an officer of the National Commission of Women, of Women, or the State Commission of Women. So anybody, anybody who knows that such an incident has happened, but the victim is somehow incapacitated mentally or physically. So, somebody else can also make a complaint on their behalf. However, please note that when you file a complaint, it cannot be an arbitrary complaint. It has to have the consent of the victim, of the putative victim. Okay, so we will need a written consent of the aggrieved person. I cannot simply say that person X is a victim because I feel so. The person X, the aggrieved person, has to agree in principle and give a written consent. Okay, so here at ICC, we are committed to an empathetic attitude. Okay, so once a complaint comes to us, you can be assured that we will be empathetic. Okay, so you can state, the victim can state her grievance in a fearless environment. So there will be no intimidation. Obviously, you can completely say whatever you would like to say. There's no shame. There's nothing to hide. This is a closed committee, a completely confidential committee. So you are absolutely open to saying anything. Okay, it will be dealt with very professionally. There will be a patient hearing to your case in a completely unbiased manner. There will be absolutely no bias, whatever. We are legally committed to hear you in an unbiased manner. There will be strict confidentiality. So if you come forward and make a complaint, the identity is your identity, unless we have to make a correlation. There are situations where we have to make correlations, but for no other reason will your identity be revealed. The identities of the complainant, witness, and respondent shall remain absolutely confidential outside the investigative procedures. Within the investigative procedures, we might have to open your name, but outside of that, ICC will keep your case completely, strictly confidential. We are committed to ensuring that the victims, okay, a victim of sexual harassment and the witnesses shall not be victimized. It's the victims as well as the witnesses shall not be victimized further or discriminated against while dealing with the complaint. Okay, so it happens in our society that when a victim of a sexual harassment makes a complaint, society members can go against them, and they can be discriminated. But we are committed to ensuring that there's no discrimination against the complainant. Hence, once again, I will reiterate, there's no question of shame. Okay, if there is something has happened, feel free to talk about it. We are going to be extremely objective. We are not going to judge you. We are not going to be biased, and we will keep it strictly confidential. Now, once a complaint has been raised, what are we going to do further? So, of course, we are going to launch an investigation. There's going to be a very systematic investigation. It takes time. Okay, nothing can be done overnight, but we will start the procedure as soon as it is feasible. Now, after ICC investigates the matter and finds, let's say, if we find the respondent to be guilty of sexual harassment, and if the respondent is found to be guilty of sexual harassment, it will be treated as a misconduct. Of course, let me also say there could be situations where we find that the respondent was not guilty. I'm not getting into that. Of course, we will let the investigation take its course. If the respondent is found guilty, it will be treated as a misconduct. We will recommend appropriate punitive action irrespective of the offender's status in the institute. The offender could be anybody. Okay, it could be a very powerful person. Regardless of that, regardless of his status of power in the institute, we are going to recommend some actions. Of course, implementation of the actions depends on the higher authority, the highest authority of the institute. But ICC will investigate, and if the respondent is found guilty, we are going to recommend certain punitive actions. Now, after having said all of this, it is also imperative to let you know that sometimes there are cases of false and malicious complaints. Okay, though it is true that there are plenty of victims of sexual harassment, and the awareness is growing now, but back in the day, a few decades back, there was not much awareness of sexual harassment, and women learned to live with the harassment, somehow modify their own life around the harassment cases and go on with it. Of course, we have matured to such an extent that now we actually have committees. We do not let the person feel ashamed. We do the best we can, but sometimes these laws or these protections can get misused. Okay, it is possible. To ensure provisions and protection of employees and students, to ensure provisions and protections of employees, to ensure that provisions and protection of employees and students do not get misused, lodging false and malicious complaints is liable for punitive action. Okay, so be very careful. If someone is influencing you and goading you into lodging a complaint, but inside you feel that it was not really a harassment case, be careful. Use your own judgment. Okay, use your own judgment, and in the rare event of a false or malicious complaint, we will go against someone who actually launched a false complaint. Okay, so launching, though we have all these protective frameworks now, but you cannot launch a false or a malicious complaint. Okay, if that is done and we find out, we will be very strict. We will actually place the complainant for punitive action if the complaint is found to be false. However, having said that, I must also add a mere inability to substantiate a complaint or to provide adequate proof will not attract attention against the complainant. So, this might seem like a dichotomy. If we find out that the complaint is false, of course, we will recommend punitive action. But let's say it's not false, you simply could not provide adequate proof. Okay, you're saying something, but there's no way to prove it one way or the other. That will not attract not attract attention against the complainant. Okay, so this roughly brings me to the end of this session. But what I really want to emphasize is to work freely without, to work without the fear of harassment is every woman's fundamental right. Okay, it is every woman's fundamental right. And here in ISER Kolkata, let us work together. Let us be sensitive. Let us be careful with our behavior and language so that we can emphatically stop sexual harassment. In this campus, we would like ISER Kolkata to be a sexual harassment free environment. Okay. So, what I would finally like to add here is women's rights are human rights also. When we talk of human rights, women's rights are a subset of that. Okay, so if you are a woman and if you're asking for your right, you're actually asking for human right. And that right includes the right to work in a safe environment without the fear of sexual harassment. So let us all in ISER Kolkata embrace and support. I'm sorry again, there are a few typos. Let us embrace and support equality. Okay, and let us make ISER Kolkata a very conducive place for women to work in. Okay, thank you. I have come to the end of my presentation. So I will request, if there are any questions, you may raise your hand. I can take a few questions, and I will request Sureshri to, read out any questions if there are any. So if there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Are there any questions in the chat box, Sureshri? No. So is there something which was unclear or you would like me to re-emphasize, or a different perspective that you wish to understand? I will be happy to try to explain it to you. So if any of the attendees have any questions, please raise your hand. Nobody has any, or even a comment, even a general comment, even from the ICC members. If the student members have any comment or anything to add to this presentation, please feel free to say. Debajyoti, is there a couple of comments that you would like to make? Just re-emphasize a few points.
No, ma'am, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you, Debajyoti. Is there anybody who would like to emphasize a few points? Okay. All right. So we do not find any questions, Shurashri. Okay. So if are there once again, if you have any questions, any comments, any clarifications, of course you can always write to us at the cash.convener website, or you can contact any member. What I will do is, for those who are around here, I will show you this slide again. So even though these numbers are given in the institute website, you can still, if you want, you can take a screenshot of these email IDs. Okay, this information is available in the ICC website, but if you want, feel free to take a screenshot of these email IDs. Okay. All right. So if there are no more questions, then I guess we can close the meeting. Okay.
No questions, ma'am.
No questions. Thank you very much. We will share this presentation in the YouTube page of ISA Kolkata. Thank you. Goodbye.